SpongeBob SquarePants has been on TV for over 2 decades, and in that time, he's had 6 different body shapes, 5 shades of yellow, and at least 4 animation styles that'll haunt your dreams. He's gone from this
Back it up!
Back it up!
to this.
I mean, how bad could it be?
To whatever this is. But here's the thing, SpongeBob's look has never just been a style. It's also a sign, a visual diary of what's happening underneath the sea and behind the scenes. Because every time SpongeBob changes, it means the show has changed too. Sometimes it's subtle, sometimes it's chaos, and sometimes it's a total creative meltdown with a backstory you would not believe. From pencil and paper charm to digital weirdness and multiverse madness, there's always a story to be told in Bikini Bottom. The first season of SpongeBob is just, different. Back then, SpongeBob was hand-drawn, pencil on paper, every frame scanned and painted by someone probably running on cold pizza and caffeine. And it shows in the best possible way. This was the only season made entirely with traditional cell animation. No fancy software, no digital shortcuts, just sweat, ink, and error-prone human hands trying to keep SpongeBob's eyes the same size, and failing gloriously. But that was the magic. SpongeBob's design wasn't consistent, it was dynamic. His shape would shift from shot to shot. His pores wandered, his skin was a pale, washed-out yellow that somehow made the underwater vibe feel more real, like you were actually watching a bootleg cartoon drawn at the bottom of the ocean. Even the backgrounds had personality. Sometimes it's flat, sometimes grainy, and sometimes weirdly beautiful. They felt like they were painted on a damp paper, and that's not a dig. That's part of what made Season 1 feel alive. Season 1 didn't just look underwater, it felt underwater. The colors were more muted, kinda matte, not the neon crisp tones we'd get later. The sound design had this soft, constant water ambiance, bubble effects, distant waves, even little things like Squidward face planting in the sand kicked up bubbles, not dust. It's why some fans joke that if you didn't see the intro, you might think the newer SpongeBob takes place on land. I mean, you could tell from this scene alone which season this scene is from. But the real power wasn't in the drawings, it was in the people behind them. Steven Hillenburg, a marine biologist turned cartoon rebel, pulled in a bunch of animation weirdos from Rocko's Modern Life and gave them one directive. Make it funny, make it weird, don't overthink it. So they didn't. They filled every frame with scream, nonsense reaction shots, and expressions that felt like meme templates. And even though SpongeBob's design broke every rule, the appeal was undeniable. Season 1 wasn't perfect. It didn't want to be. It wanted to be alive, and it gives SpongeBob a life. But unfortunately, this kind of hand-drawn technique means more expensive episodes, so they had to make some changes in the future. Season 2 is the first season to go digitally inked and painted, which basically means SpongeBob finally discovered computers. The smudges are gone, the wobbly lines are tightened, the colors are also brighter, smoother. But don't worry, the charm stayed. SpongeBob still bounced like a rubber band on espresso. His face still stretched like pizza dough. The infamous new cheeks show up around dying for pie, though they were clearly still in beta mode. And even though it was digitally inked, the animation was still mostly hand-drawn. You could feel the effort. Especially early in the season, there was a ton of movement. The animators started pushing the characters' faces like they were made of Play-Doh. You got the nightmare stare, the ultra-detailed reaction faces, the kind of shots that made you feel the energy. And behind all that madness is C.H. Greenblatt. Greenblatt didn't draw SpongeBob like a character. He drew him like a panic attack in square form, and it ruled. The show wasn't just trying to be funny anymore, it knew it was funny. SpongeBob wasn't just a weirdo sponge now, he was the guy. Even Bikini Bottom leveled up. Backgrounds got more textured, color gradients started popping in during emotional moments. It still felt underwater, just like the ocean had gotten into art school. SpongeBob isn't the only one that got upgraded. Patrick ditched the M brows and got his classic Z slants by episode 4. His pink color also got a retouch. SpongeBob's color? Somewhere between beige, white cheddar, and cartoon anxiety. Still asymmetrical, still off-model in the best way. This was also the season that blew SpongeBob wide open. Graveyard Shift, Sailor Mouth, Something Smells. These episodes brought us so many memes, people still quote them to this day. And if Season 2 was the glow-up, Season 3 was the peak form. This is SpongeBob graphics running at maximum settings. Peak weird, peak funny, peak what did I just watch and why am I still laughing 3 hours later? The animation is still bouncy, but now it's precise. Every line feels intentional, every gag hits with surgical timing. Yeah, it's a little stiffer than Season 2, especially in the second half, but what it loses in stretch, it makes up for in focus. SpongeBob's shape leaned more rectangular, his eyeballs shrank a bit, and those Aaron Springer cheeks, they're now a standard feature, like he's always on the edge of laughing or snapping. The acting was also in peak form. Tom Kenny crushed the job this season. SpongeBob's timing, micro-reactions, the pause before the punchline delivery, all of it is razor sharp. This was the season that gave us the camping episode, Chocolate with Nuts, Just One Bite, and the Krusty Krab training video. Every frame of Season 3 screams perfection. This was the last season that still felt underwater, not just digitally rendered to look like it. It's crazy to think how much they improved for each season, not just in animation, but also overall quality. But under all that gold was a goodbye. This was supposed to be the end. Season 3 is the final breath of the golden era. Right before the mutation, before the humor turned into a fever dream. This was the last time SpongeBob felt fully SpongeBob. It was building towards this, the original movie. This was the final act, the big, weird, emotional curtain call Stephen Hillenburg always planned. A 90-minute mic drop for the weird little sponge that somehow took over the world. And honestly, it delivered. Right from the first frame, you could tell something had changed. This wasn't your Saturday morning SpongeBob anymore. This was widescreen. The animation stepped up hard. We're talking deep shading, soft gradients, smooth outlines, and sunsets that looked straight up beautiful. That scene alone, where SpongeBob walks through a moody orange-pink sky or skywater, looked better than half the animated films released that year. The animators knew this was their chance to show off, and they did. They went full Looney Tunes style, but with restraint. The characters were still two-dimensional, still SpongeBob, but the expressions? They went off-model in the best way. Faces warped, eyes bulged, cheeks flapped like pancake batter. There are expressions in this movie that the show has never attempted again, and probably never will. Even the character designs got more subtle tweaks. SpongeBob looked more refined, thinner outline, richer color, a little more polished than Season 3's squishy chaos. You could argue he looked grown up, just a little, which is perfect because that's the story the movie told. The Goofy Goober rock solo? Iconic. The David Hasselhoff surf rescue? Based. The one last tear in Shell City? Emotional. And yet, it worked. This movie had a single purpose, to end SpongeBob on a high note, and Hillenburg nailed it. Unfortunately, Nickelodeon wasn't done. They saw SpongeBob riding David Hasselhoff like a jet ski and thought, you know what, let's make more, just without the guy who created it. And that's why things got weird in the following seasons. At first glance, Season 4 looks mostly familiar. The animation still has some of that movie polish, but then you look closer. The animation style in Season 4 is a mixed bag. The first half is not bad. Episodes like Fear of a Krabby Patty even stand out, with slightly looser animation, brighter colors, and more expressive faces. In fact, that episode has a completely unique look. SpongeBob's design in that episode is slightly sharper, more angular, and it's never used again. I don't know why. That one episode is a strange, beautiful anomaly. But after that, things slowly start getting meh. SpongeBob and Patrick get larger pupils, their faces shift slightly, more soft round bean than chaotic sponge. The classic old cheeks mostly vanish. SpongeBob barely uses them anymore. And while Squidward stays mostly untouched, the rest of the cast starts getting a weird, almost sanitized makeover. Some episodes feel pale and washed out, kind of like Season 2's duller tones. Others are more saturated, but still lacking warmth. It's just inconsistent. Some frames look like Season 3, others feel like they've been passed through a cold Instagram filter. You can tell they're trying to make it look more polished, but in the process, they lose something. And the animation itself? Well, it walks a tightrope. By the time you hit episodes like The Pink Purloiner or Best Day Ever, you feel it hard. This sponge is moving weird.
Mr. Sun came up and he smiled at me. Said it's gonna be a good one, just wait and see.
I'm not saying it's bad, it's just noticeably average. Like they were trying to keep things safe. The backgrounds still feel professional, they do the job. Bikini Bottom still feels underwater, just with less personality. SpongeBob personally, however, that's where the real shift begins. SpongeBob's not quite himself. His energy is still high, but his character feels simplified. He's louder, fuzzier, less sharp. It's the start of flanderization, that slow cartoon death spiral where characters get boiled down to one exaggerated trait. In SpongeBob's case, goofy innocence becomes relentless stupidity. He's not broken yet, but you can feel it coming. There are still funny episodes in the season, still weird moments, but something is undeniably different. Season 5 basically picks up right where Season 4 left off, but this time the stiffness kicks in like a karate chop to the animation budget. Seriously, it starts stiff. The movements slow down, reactions flatten, characters barely stretch. Midway through Season 5, the show ditches traditional hand-drawn sketches entirely and goes fully digital, using computer tablets for both animation and storyboards. Yes, you could argue that it's still technically hand-drawn, but it's just not the same. No more pencil lines means no more sketchy energy. This is the beginning of what some would call the Photoshop era. Every line is smooth, every pose is calculated, and every character moves like they're scared to rip their pants. Starting with Pest of the West, the switch is official. No paper, no pencil, just styluses and screens and a lot of Control-Z. It's not all bad though. Oddly enough, while the animation got rigid, the coloring actually improved. There's something weirdly nostalgic about it. The color palette from Season 1 makes a kind of return, just in a brighter, cleaner form. And the backgrounds? Still beautiful. There's a ton of effort in the scenery. Bikini Bottom starts feeling more built out, more lived in, even if the people walking around it move like they're in a turn-based RPG. You'll also spot new background fish, slightly sharper outlines, and for some reason, Plankton gets huge. Like physically, his model is noticeably bigger. Not sure why, just is. As for Mr. Krabs, his color shifts from classic crusty red to some strange glossy pink-orange-red mix. It's like he's just covered in glass now. It's not a plot point, it's just happening, permanently. There are still fun moments, don't get me wrong. A few episodes still deliver. Clever visual gags, decent pacing, solid timing, but you can sense the show losing its spontaneity. This is the last episode that feels tolerable before things really fall apart. The final era of, okay, this is fine, before SpongeBob starts melting into a dumb, expressionless husk of his former self. Because entering Season 6, something went wrong here. Like, seriously wrong. Season 6 is where SpongeBob officially transforms into an underwater biohazard. The character's downgraded, the pacing is off the rails, the animation is a mix of unsettling stillness and weird facial goo. Everything now looks cheaper. Like Bikini Bottom started outsourcing its paint job to the discount aisle at Office Depot. SpongeBob himself takes the biggest hit. His design this season is bad. He gets those giant puffy cheeks drawn as a default setting, and not just when he's smiling. Sometimes he has puffed cheeks while his mouth is open, which somehow looks worse than you think it does. This is also the time where gross-out humor hits terminal velocity. We got The Splinter, To Love a Patty, House Fancy, and Pet or Pests. Those episodes aren't just gross in theory, they're animated to be gross. Zoom-ins on wounds, pus bubbles, skin textures, you name it. They're trying to traumatize kids for good. At this point, SpongeBob lost his charm, especially his bounce. And in the middle of all this, Nickelodeon dropped Truth or Square, a shiny widescreen 10th anniversary special. It looked really nice, but it felt like putting a new roof on a house full of termites. It couldn't hide the fact that SpongeBob was in an identity crisis. As for Season 7 and 8, let's just call it what it is. It's Season 6 with a new haircut. It's not worse, but that's not saying much. The animation is still stiff, reaction shots look like they're animated in PowerPoint, SpongeBob doesn't bounce, he twitches. There's this weird disconnection between the jokes and the motion, the timing feels robotic, and just expressionless in general.
Rude! 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 Rude!
They don't do anything bold, but it also doesn't do anything right. It's just kind of there. Oh, but there is one beautiful, weird little blip. It's a SpongeBob Christmas. It's a full stop motion. No weird cheeks, no floaty face, just a lovingly sculpted foam version of our guy. It's creative, it has that handmade heartbeat the rest of the season forgot. And then, it ends. Not the show, but the era. Season 8 also serves as the final stop before SpongeBob goes full HD, the last time we see him in glorious, boxy 4x3. And somehow, that's the most emotional thing about it. Because after this, it only gets worse. This is technically the first full season animated in HD, fully widescreen and 16:9. But don't let the aspect ratio fool you. The animation is still robotic. The colors are painfully bright, almost too clean, like someone scrubbed the screen with bleach. SpongeBob's eyes got a little bigger, his face takes up more of his body again, which should feel right, but the fluidity just isn't there. In fact, fans of SpongeBob consider this period to be the show's lowest point. Thankfully, it was somewhat short-lived and salvageable because all it took was the return of Hillenburg, which he did to write the story for and oversee the production of the second SpongeBob movie, Sponge Out of Water, released in 2015, midway through the show's 9th season. And you can feel it right away. With Hillenburg's return, Sponge Out of Water returned a certain spark and charm to SpongeBob and his world. SpongeBob himself saw a design overhaul, returning him to a smoother appearance, much like in the earlier seasons.
I think we have a few minutes before he gets here. Oh, he's right on top of us!
The more outlandish aspects of recent seasons were toned down drastically, and the humor. Once again, it regained its age-defying innocence, glimmers of what made SpongeBob so special in the first place. And when the second half of Season 9 airs, things get better. It's not a total transformation, but the DNA is clearly shifting. Reaction shots aren't stiff mannequins anymore, they're animated again. Squash and stretch is back on the menu. Even SpongeBob himself looks better. It's not quite the golden age, but it's the first time in years the show starts feeling hopeful. Stephen Hillenburg's return didn't just recharge the movie, it recharged the show. He wasn't even back in full control, but his presence was felt. But tragically, Hillenburg's return would also be short-lived. In November of 2018, after a short battle with motor neuron disease, Hillenburg passed away at the age of 57 during the production of Season 12. In the end, Season 9 is not a perfect season, but it is a turning point for the following season. Because from the jump, Season 10 to 12 ditches any lingering stiffness from the past. Everything is animated, even things that don't need to be. It's a return to squash and stretch, not just as a tool, but as a philosophy. Characters have weight again, their eyes don't just move, they boing. You could say it's a technical flex. And the color work? Bright, bold, like a highlighter. A few visual tweaks help make this version of SpongeBob feel slightly more familiar. Mr. Krabs is red again, not that strange pink-orange mix from Season 6 to 8. SpongeBob's old cheeks start showing up more, and thankfully, his nose stops growing every season. No more Squidward cosplay. Personally, I would say this version of SpongeBob looks better than he has in a long time. But even though the animations never looked more polished, something still feels off. Because everything is a gag now. There's no pause, no breathing room for subtlety, it's just expressive to the point of being exhausting.
Tough mallows. Could be more marshy.
The show is no longer about telling stories with charm and rhythm. It's about being a meme machine. It's viral content for the sake of popularity. This era is sometimes called post-sequel SpongeBob, referring to how much the second movie's influence bled into the main show. It's not subtle, but it is stylish. One bittersweet note though, Stephen Hillenburg was still involved in this era. He passed away in 2018 during the production of Season 12, the last season he directly contributed to. So maybe he acknowledges Red Mist too? Who knows? His presence wasn't as impactful as in the early years, but it was felt, especially in tone. After his death, the show was in uncharted waters again. By the time we hit Season 13, SpongeBob isn't just a cartoon anymore. He's a multimedia empire. Aside from the main show, we've got CG spin-offs like Camp Coral, The Patrick Star Show, plus a flood of shorts, specials, and experimental formats on YouTube. This is the SpongeBob multiverse era. Let's start with the flagship, the main show. Season 13 continues the ultra-fluid, rubber hose style from 10 to 12, but cranks the visual comedy to max capacity. Every frame is wild. Not to mention, after Hillenburg's passing, Nickelodeon greenlit the one thing he never liked: spin-offs. And not just one, a whole buffet of them. Camp Coral is a CG animated prequel that reimagines SpongeBob and the gang as kids at summer camp. The animation is polished, Pixar-like, with a soft plasticine sheen. The Patrick Star Show is a spin-off centered around Patrick running a surreal talk show with his family. The style is closer to the main show, with a little adjustment on the color. We also have Sponge on the Run, 2021, SpongeBob's third movie, but unlike the last two, this one is entirely CG. The visuals are honestly stunning. Soft textures, lush lighting, expressive animation. But narratively, it's a mess. A full reboot of SpongeBob's origin, which contradicts the show, crammed with cameos and plot holes and clearly made to launch Camp Coral. It looks amazing, but it's more of a product than a story. At this point, people start to lose hope for SpongeBob. Some said it's not special anymore, it's just a franchise and it will never be the same again. And somehow, they managed to prove us wrong. Starting in season 14 and continuing into season 15, eagle-eyed fans began noticing something strange. SpongeBob looked more classic. No, it's not season 3 all over again, but there are clear, deliberate callbacks to the early 2000s style. We're talking about thicker line art, less crisp, more hand-drawn in feel, less exaggerated bounce, more grounded movements like in seasons 2 and 3, facial expressions that stay on the model longer instead of morphing every frame, also with occasional pauses and old-school comedic rhythm.
It's Spot! He's stuck in the tree!
You can feel the animators pulling back from the meme injection style of seasons 11 to 13. Maybe they figured out the golden recipe after all this time. Hell yeah! You could say this era blends modern polish with retro personality. The animation is still digital, but the timing is less hyperactive.
It's only been 1 hour, but I can't take it anymore.
Even the backgrounds feel warmer, softer gradients, a few more painted textures, and better use of color depth. Not quite the grainy watercolor vibes of season 1, but definitely closer than anything we've seen in over a decade. Whether it's nostalgia, better direction, or just animators finally getting breathing room, it's working. After years of SpongeBob being treated like a meme generator, season 15 feels like the team remembered who he is. He's not just a face you stretch for laughs, he's a character. A weird, optimistic sponge in a weird little world, who's funniest when the absurdity is rooted in personality, not just punchlines. It may not be perfect, but it's a promising start. Maybe we'll see something better in season 16. SpongeBob has been through more visual phases than most cartoons survive. He started as a wobbly doodle with too many teeth, turned into a corporate mascot with weird faces and slapstick jokes. Then somehow, against all odds, he found balance again. It was a slow identity crisis in motion. When Hillenburg left, the style clearly lost its soul. It got louder, cleaner, and cheaper all at once. SpongeBob was no longer himself. But with time, and some long overdue creative course correction, the animators started rediscovering the weird, imperfect rhythm that made SpongeBob, SpongeBob. From hand-drawn madness to sterile stiffness to post-meme redemption, this yellow sponge outlived every prediction. And if you watched our last episode, the one that gave us childhood PTSD, you understand that animation can hit harder than it has any right to. Because sometimes all it takes to scare kids is one bad animation. But all it takes to save a show is one weird little sponge. See you next time.